Hello my bookish friends out there in booktube land, and welcome to this episode of Tristan and the Classics, where we're dipping into the fascinating realm of literary theory. Now, have you ever read a book and thought to yourself, is there more to this book than meets the eye? Have I got what I need to get out of this book? Are there deeper, darker currents in which I could be fishing for information? Well, literary theory is the tool that enables us to try and get more from beneath the book, reading between the lines, as it were. Literary theory offers us different lenses through which we can interpret the text that we're reading, highlighting certain areas while pushing others into the background. But exactly what is literary theory and how does it work, more importantly? That's what we're discussing here. So, without further ado, let's dig in, shall we? Literary theory is often likened to different lenses through which we read a text. So if you think of literal lenses, a microscope, you're going to see the wing of a butterfly extremely close up, but if you use the magnifying glass, you get a different image altogether. You're getting different details brought out. Another way to think of literary theory, though, more modern, is filters on your phone or on your computer. Now, I'm going to put filters across my face as I'm talking now, and you'll notice how filters will select particular hues and deselect other hues. They'll enhance certain contrasts or remove brightness or saturation levels, whatever it may be. The point is, it's giving you a different way to feel and interpret the image that you're watching. Now, literary theories do the same with a book. They give us different ways to examine any text and draw out different aspects of it. So, literary theory could include looking at the historical aspects. It could look at the form of the writing. It can look at through a political lens. It can look through a gender lens. It can even look through the lens of what role the reader plays. Now, what in essence all of these theories do is they give us a framework with which to approach a book in a certain way, and they give us a vocabulary to understand and interpret that book, and obviously that's shared then in academia. Some of it can be quite dry and dull, but the point is it gives us the tools with which to go at a text in a particular way. So what we're going to do in this video now, we're going to take a look at how various lenses or theories can help us interpret Jane Austen's text of Pride and Prejudice. We're just going to read a short snippet as an example for a couple of different theories so that you see how the lens changes the way you read. So the first theory we're going to take a look at is formalism. Formalism focuses exclusively on the text itself. You may think that's obvious, but it's not. You see, the formalists will only take what is in the book. They'll focus on the language that's used. Why this word instead of that word? They'll look at the structure of how it's built. They'll look at literary devices. For instance, rhetoric is used in literature. There is also the use of short sentences versus long sentences, short paragraphs versus great swathes of paragraph. Why? What is this telling us about the story? Now, a formalist approaching Pride and Prejudice, for instance, might look at the use of irony throughout the whole book. It's often said about this book, the ironic wit of Jane Austen. And that irony, the formalist will show how it highlights the absurdities and the strictures of societal convention compared to what each individual person wants. Society versus individualism, as it were, and the misunderstandings that it creates. And the humour that it brings about by one person behaving in a particular way when we can see straight through at what they really mean. So if we were to take a look at Darcy's proposal to Elizabeth, let's just read his opening comment and look at it as a formalist would. "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." So there's a great line. That's the way to chat someone up, isn't it? The formalist is going to look at the structure of that sentence to reveal something about the text. Notice the perfection of the structure. This is a moment of raw passion. This is Darcy doing something he's really not used to, which is stepping out of societal convention and exposing his innermost feelings. But look at the use of words. You know, he doesn't say, "Oh, Lizzie, I'm madly in love with you. I'm passionately head over heels about you." There's no colloquialism here. It's a very grammatical statement with an unusual use of words such as, "You must allow me." That's an interesting way to start a declaration of love. It's very authoritarian. To tell you how ardently, I mean, ardent is a great word, but who says that to someone they're trying to propose to? You know, you would say passionately, madly in love, like I said before. And then how much I admire and love you. Not just I love you, which is simple and got the pathos in it, but admire and love you. He's prepared it. He says it so straightforwardly. And what that shows us is the stricture of convention. It shows the formalism of Mr. Darcy. It shows his unnaturalness. And it makes the proposal somewhat absurd. And we find it quite amusing, although Lizzie doesn't. And if you were to read on, the way he goes about justifying his feelings towards Lizzie and how it's not really to his advantage, he's using truth. That's what the formalist will focus on. Look at the language. He's being truthful, honest, upright, virtuous, but he's actually being really insulting by not couching his language. So that's how a formalist would look, for example, at a snippet or a snippet of a book to draw out something, to draw out meaning. They just focus on the text alone. Our next literary theory that we're going to take a look at is one that really appeals to many people, and it's psychoanalysis, the psychoanalytical theory in literature. This is based off the works of Sigmund Freud. Notably, the idea of the ego and the id, the true self, our desire for expression, and our subconscious, which is much more deep than most people colloquially refer to as the subconscious. Our innermost desires and feelings and fears and how they work their way out of the character. So the psychoanalytical reading will see the activities and the comments of a character, but will search for the subconscious influence that's pushing on them, whether that's from society, their upbringing, events. But you might think, well, how can they get the subconscious motives when a character doesn't come with a full backstory and events in its life? Well, the psychoanalytical theorist will also take into account the author and any psychological senses they feel are coming through in the writing, which may be influenced by the author's own life and experiences. A way of looking at a theory of psychoanalytical reading in Pride and Prejudice, you could, for instance, take a look at Elizabeth Bennet and how she responds to her mother and her father. So take a look at her rejection of Mr. Collins' proposal to her. "You could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who could make you so." Now, a psychoanalytical reading of this rejection of Mr. Collins as Elizabeth rejecting her mother's influence, rejecting her mother's demeanour and behaviour, which she finds somewhat embarrassing. And she's trying to assert herself by pushing away whatever her mother suggests. As well as that, it could suggest the asserting of self and being independent because of her relationship with her father, who is quite a detached figure. And is this showing itself in Lizzie? He gives her the ability to express herself. So you see, there could be subconscious things going on in Lizzie's mind that cause her to reject Mr. Collins. And this can be taken throughout the whole book. Another example of psychoanalytical reading could just be involved with how Darcy reacts with his aunt, Catherine de Bourgh, and his sister. What can be drawn from his subconscious through readings of those texts where they interact. So that's psychoanalytical theory. It has a particular filter on the book. You're searching for a particular meaning in a particular area. Now let's take a look at Marxist theory for interpreting a literary text. This is a theory you've probably heard of quite a bit, but not many people are too familiar with how it works. In short, this is Marxist theory, how a Marxist theorist would go about analysing literature. Marxist theory focuses or puts the hues on the filter to enhance class struggle and social inequality. The role that economics plays in the building of characters and their interaction with one another. So a Marxist theorist might take a close look at how Darcy's fortune of 10,000 a year causes other persons to interact with him, how it may give him a certain position and privilege in society. And Marxist theory will enhance those details. And it will be very interested and concerned with looking at that part of the book. Lady Catherine de Bourgh as well, being related to Darcy, and how Mr. Collins relates to her in his fawning and obsequious way. Again, that would be a looking at people's behaviours because of class, because of struggle, because of economics. But let's take a look at a sentence about Mrs. Bennet. Her father had been an attorney in Meryton and had left her £4,000. Now this sentence comes when we're being given a bit of the background of the sisters, the Bennet sisters' economical situation that they find themselves in. And a Marxist theorist would lean upon this and examine how, because of their only moderate financial situation, that the sisters are now forced to seek advantageous marriage partners in order to secure some kind of comfort in their life, highlighting the role that money, economic struggle, factors into society and guides the movements and activities of people. That's Marxist theory in a nutshell. Our next theory is feminist theory in reading literature. This is a theory that has gained in popularity and recognition over the past number of decades. Feminist theory focuses on the traditional gender roles, the power dynamics between the sexes, and the position of women traditionally in society. Feminist theory seeks to examine how those dynamics affect the female characters, and the male actually, by contrast, through literature in the way they interact with other characters. Now, going back to Pride and Prejudice, an example of feminist theory could be Lizzie Bennet and her friend Charlotte, who she's very close to, and how they interact as is within society as women. Think, and even if they try and subvert the gender role as well. So just listen to this quote regarding Charlotte getting married. "I am not romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home." Now that's Charlotte accepting the proposal of Mr. Collins, who Lizzie Bennet thinks is abominable, you know, an oily so-and-so. But Charlotte takes it. Now, a feminist reading might use this as a commentary on the limited options of women in their day, especially if they wanted to maintain a certain level of living. And that she just goes along with it, and she understands that home is the place for a woman, and that's what should be the highest feature. But a feminist reading can also look at Liz's reaction and the subverting of the gender narrative. Because Lizzie turned down Mr. Collins, was not content with the place that women were placed in this time period, and wanted to exert her own independence. And that's how a feminist reader would go about looking at this book. But of course, as with all of these theories, imagine taking this one example and now spreading it across all of the roles as you come across them in the book. What kind of message might you pull out? You see, instead of focusing on the whole of the book, you've got a filter which brings out certain details which make a pattern. Another literary theory is reader response theory, and a lot of people who get into studying literature or want to get deeper into it come across this and are fascinated by it. Reader response theory is a lens that focuses on the reader and their role in making the story live. An argument in this is that the story is not yet a story until the reader picks it up and reads it. And they will impress their own perceptions, their own experience into the book and draw certain things out. An example of this would be the famous opening line of Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So you probably know that as one of the most famous lines in English literature. Now, the reader response theorist will, instead of saying this is what the text means, like a formalist, will say, well, it depends on how the reader reads that. One of them may read it as complete irony. They may interpret that as this is what women think men are looking for. Whereas another reader may have read that and taken it as gospel truth, and therefore it is true that all men in possession of a fortune must be in want of a wife. And that sets up how the book is going to be interpreted. Then you go through the rest of the book with your filter really enhancing the reader's understanding, their subjective interpretation of the text. So there is a quick overview of what literary theory is and how it helps in getting meaning out of books. Literary theory as a concept is much easier than people tend to imagine, or even how it's often explained. Now, if you were to go into one of the theories more deeply, then yes, you're going to come across an extraordinary amount of vocabulary that you'll need to use and methods of using the framework. But as a rule, or as an idea, that's what literary theory is. It allows you to take a text and highlight or bring out into focus certain aspects in a way that you can maybe glean some information from. Whether that is purely from the text itself, like the formalist. Maybe it's how economy has influenced the world and we see it hidden in the text. The role of genders in the world through feminism. The subconscious mind of the author and of the characters, perhaps, in the way that they react in the story. The role of the reader themselves is even there, or post-colonial. What was the role of the dominant powers? Did that play a factor into the story? So that's literary theory. However, this is a really important point. Literary theory does not come without significant weaknesses. And an over-attachment to literary theory in my problem can actually undermine a text and undermine your enjoyment of literature. Now, if you want me to, I will do a follow-up on this video talking about the weaknesses of literary theory. So let me know down below if you want to hear my opinions on that. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and until the next time, I wish you joy in whatever you read.